This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Parashat Balak. Gemara tells us in Masechta Brachos, Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, Amar Rabbi Avo ben Zotrasi, Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Zvida. That Parashat Balak is a very important parasha. It's so important that of all the parashas in the Torah, Bikshu L'Kvaya Parashat Balak with Kriya Shema. They wanted to put Parashat Balak in Kriya Shema. Can you imagine that? Twice every day, aside from the three parashas, you have to learn the whole Parashat Balak. It's not an easy parasha to read. So imagine talking about Bilam's donkey twice a day. So that's what, twice a day. The Chachamim wanted to be Kaveh Parashat Balak. So why didn't they? Mnei Malay Kavua, Mishum, Tayrach Tzibor.
What do you mean Kriyat Shema? What is that?
Shema Yisrael, Hashem Lekeinu, Hashem Echad. Twice a day you have a mitzvah d'oraisa, uv'shach b'cha, uv'kumecha, to say the three parashas. They wanted to be Kaveh, to say Parshas Bilam, Parshas Balak in Kriya Shema. Why didn't they? Because of Tircha de Tzibur. Okay? Now, what's the reason why they wanted to be Kaveh, Parshas Balak in Kriya Shema? Because of the pasuk that it says Kara Shachav Ka'ari Uchalavi Mi Yekimenu, which is similar to Uvashach B'cha Uvkumecha, but eventually they decided not to establish it because of Tircha de Tzibura. So what exactly is this concept of Tircha de Tzibura? You're now to make the Tzibur wait. What's the big Avera? What's the big sin? You know, there are a lot of things that we do to make the Tzibur wait. Why is it so bad to make the Tzibur wait? So in fact, if you look in the Shas Tshuvas, Michtav L'Chizkiyahu. Who wrote Michtav L'Chizkiyahu? The author of the Stei Chemed, Reb Chizkiyahu Medini, who was tremendous encyclopedic mind. In fact, the story goes that the Stei Chemed, they asked him, to what do you attribute your tremendous mind, your tremendous intellectual capacity? So actually, there's a Maisa that there was a kollel. It was called Rav Zarach's kollel, and Rav Chizkiyahu was always the last one to stay in the kollel. And there's another kollel Yungalite who was jealous of him. And he paid the maid to come in, and when she would clean up, she would accuse him of improper behavior. And they accused him, and there were rumors spreading, and the owner of the kollel didn't know what to do. Should he believe the maid? Should he believe the Stei Chemed? Ultimately, he fired the maid, but people were up in arms. They said, get rid of this guy. I don't care how long his beard is, how big of a tzaddik he is. And a day later, the person who hired the maid dropped dead suddenly. So fine. The maid didn't know what to do. Now the maid lost her job, and nobody would hire her. So the maid came to the Stei Chemed, and she says to the Stei Chemed, look, if I clear your name, if I admit publicly that I was the one who made up the accusation, will you allow me to return my job? So at first the Stei Chemed said, he wanted to get his name cleared. But then he decided that it would be shameful to the family of the person who hired her, and he decided not to clear his name. And he writes that from the moment he decided to accept the insult, his mind opened up supernaturally, and he attributes his success to that story. Okay, in any event, Rabbi Say, he writes in the Shas Tshuvas Michtav L'Chizkiyahu that this concept of Tircha de Tzibura, we would think it's a very small thing. However, he writes it's a machlokes haposkim, whether it's an Isser D'Rabbanan or an Isser D'Oraisa. He writes, if you look in the tshuva, we'll get to what his question was later, but he in the third line in the second paragraph he writes, "The loimi boy lamaydi kasivna banias daiti b'chidushayal torshach archaim simin kadem de issa tarzi re'en elam drabana." He said, my opinion is that Tircha de Tzibur is an issa drabanan. But he says, even according to the opinion of, he says, but Afim Nemar, a few lines down, the Isser Tarech Tzibur D'Oraisa. Even if you want to go with the opinion that Tircha de Tzibur is D'Oraisa, which he quotes as the opinion of the Shatz. Who is the Shatz? The Sefer Shalmei Tzibur, written by the Mari Al-Ghazi. So he entertains, there's a possibility, Rabbi Isai, that the Isser of Tircha de Tzibura could be an Isser D'Oraisa, which is quite surprising. So it's at least an Isser D'Rabbanan, perhaps even an Isser D'Oraisa. So So, we would like to investigate what exactly is the Yisr of being Matriach the Tzibur. What does it mean to be Matriach the Tzibur? What are you doing wrong? Where in the Torah does it say you can't be Matriach the Tzibur? Okay. So there's a Mishnah Masechta Yuma on Daf Samach Ches Amud Beis. The Mishnah talks about the Kriyas HaTorah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. And the Mishnah says like this: Balak Kohen Gadol likrois. When the Kohen Gadol came to read on Yom Kippur, so it says, the Mishnah says he could wear whatever clothing he wants, his white clothing, his street clothing. In other words, the Kriyas HaTorah of Yom Kippur was not part of the Avodah. So therefore, there was no requirement as to what kind of clothing he needed to wear. The Mishnah goes on to say how he got the Sefer Torah. We gave a share on this recently, regarding the topic of moving a Sefer Torah. If you're allowed to move a Sefer Torah out of a Aron Kodesh of a shul. And then the Mishnah goes on to say, he would read Acharei Mois, he would read Va'ach Ba'asar, and then he would be Goydel the Sefer Torah, he would close it, Umanicha Becheika, he would put in his lap, Va'omer, and he would say, Yoiser Mimashe Karasi Lefnechem Kasuv Kan. That everybody should know that what I read to you is not the only thing it says over here. There's more to the story than what I read to you. Then the Mishnah says that he would then proceed to read, right until now he's reading from which Sefer? Teres Kohanim, Vayikra. He would then proceed to read from Bamidbar, from Uva'asar Shebechumash HaPekudim, Kairei Alpeh. He would read from Bamidbar, but he would not roll the Sefer Torah to Bamidbar. Instead, what would he do? He would read it Balpeh. Okay, so you got it? The first laning would be from Teres Kohanim, from Vayikra. And now what does he do? He has to read from Bamidbar. So we would expect, get the two big guys, the two big Abon, they roll, right? No. He would read it Balpeh. You're not allowed to read the Torah Balpeh. Right? It says, K'soiv l'chas hadvarim ha'ela dvarim shebechsav iyat rashoy loimer Balpeh. You're not allowed to say Psukim Balpeh. Right? You're not allowed to just say a pasuk Balpeh, unless it's something that's shagar b'fi hakol, unless it's a pasuk that everyone is very familiar with. You want to say Shema Yisrael Balpeh, you can. Or unless it's, let's say, Tehillim or Tachanunim, you're allowed to say Balpeh. Or maybe there's a special dispensation if someone's giving a drasha and it would be too difficult to, go find every single pasuk that they need to quote. But ordinarily, there is an Isser, perhaps an Isser Dairaisa, to read a pasuk Balpeh. And nevertheless, this Isser is suspended in this case. We do not roll the Sefer Torah. Instead, he reads it by heart. Why? Why don't we just roll the Sefer Torah? What?
He says it by heart.
Right, he says it by heart, correct. He's kairei. Correct, right. Kairei doesn't just mean to read, it means to say out loud, right? What? Okay? So, the Gemara says in Yuma, on Daf Ayin, a blot and a half later, frek the Gemara, Amai, why does he read it Balpeh? Niglo v'nikri. Let him roll the Sefer Torah and read, right? Let him niglo v'nikri. Amar Rav Huna, Breder Rav Yeshua, Amar Rav Sheshes, Lefi she'ein goylen Sefer Torah b'tzibur mipnei k'vayid hatzibur. We do not roll a Sefer Torah publicly because out of respect for the tzibur. So again, if you look at the terminology over here, the terminology is slightly different than the Gemara and Brachas on Yud Beis and Beis. The Gemara uses the language of Toirach tzibur, Tircha tzibur. The Gemara in Yuma says Kavayid tzibur, Kavayid tzibur. Says the Rashba in the Chuvas HaRashba in Chelek Aleph Siman Kuf Tes Vav. The Rashba wants to know like this: any kohanim over here? So you have a kohen, and it's leaning time, and he say, Yamoid Chanan ben Chaim Zedel. How do you like that? So Yamoid Chanan ben Chaim Zedel. So the only thing is, he's a big tzaddik. He's in the middle of davening Shemon Esrei. So now what do? Do we wait for him? Or do we make believe he's not here and call up the next best option?
Someone else walks up without being called.
You mentioned his name already?
I mentioned it, but yeah. So now what? You wait for him?
No.
Who knows how long it's going to take, right? Maybe it'll take another 3 hours till he finishes Shemon Esrei. So, right? So what do? Do we say, we have a mitzvah sasei doiraisa of a kiddush, you got to honor your kohen, right? Don't forget about the kohen. On the other hand, it's tircha de tzibura. So that's the shaila of the Rashba, to which the Rashba answers, tshuva, mistabra she'ein mamtinan lai. Logically, we should not wait for him. Why? Shaloi b'chol makom amru sheyakdim kohen. We don't always give the kohen first. Sharei b'makom Talmud Chacham, if there is a Torah scholar, va'afilu ger kaidem lai. If you have a Talmud Chacham goes before a Kohen. Let's say for benching, right? For benching, you have a Talmud Chacham, you have a Kohen. Who gets it? Who gets the benching? Halacha l'maisa. If the Kohen is also Talmud Chacham, then the Kohen. But if it's a Talmud Chacham or a Kohen, who gets the benching? Talmud Chacham. Is a Talmud Chacham allowed to be Meichel? No, not allowed to. Gemara in Megillah says it's Chayiv Misa. Talmud Chacham can't be Meichel then. So Talmud Chacham takes precedence. How about for an Aliyah? Technically, the Talmud Chacham also, but we have a takana that we don't budge. I've seen shuls that even today, the rabbi gets Kohen. Yeah, I've seen.
He goes that
it's only talking about a regular Talmud Chacham, but
Mechilas Kohen? What does he say? What do they call him?
It's not a matter of Mechilas Kohen. Talmud Chacham is first. Talmud Chacham is first. Even for benching certainly.
Well, where it applies this?
Yeah, I've seen.
Call him up. Did they say?
They say Yamoy Shmerel ben Beryl. That's it. No Kohen. You know.
Well, where it applies to our tzibur? Only in shul?
We'll see. What's the definition of tzibur? How big is a tzibur?
Let's say a person will go to the mikveh and take a shower. It takes him more than 10 minutes. To our tzibur?
How many people waiting online? You have a minion online?
I don't know. I'm asking.
Okay.
Is this called Torah tzibur?
So we're going to see. We'll throw it out now. Rashi says in the Pardes Hagadol, the definition of a tzibur is 10 people. 10 people. You don't need all of Klal Yisrael to be Nazar. 10 people is a tzibur. Okay, but look at the Rashba. The Rashba says Talmud Chacham takes precedence of a Kohen. So if a Talmud Chacham goes before a Kohen, which means kavod of a Chacham goes before the Kohen, so you're going to say that the kavod of a Talmud Chacham is more important than the kavod of a tzibur? No. At least the kavod of the tzibur should be equal to the kavod of a Talmud Chacham. So if a Talmud Chacham should go before a Kohen, then the kavod of a tzibur should go before a Kohen. V'lo yehei kavod tzibur kal mitzurba mirabanan. Right? If the halacha is even a young Talmud Chacham takes precedence of a Kohen, so then the kavod of a tzibur should not be any less than the kavod of a tzurba mirabanan. Now look what he writes. Every Shabbos, you daven Shemona Esrei 3 times. The Shemona Esrei is not so long on Shabbos. Normally, right, on a regular day, you have 18 brachas. On Shabbos, how many brachas do you have? 7. That means you've limited the main body of Shemona Esrei from 13 to 1. Why? Tircha de Tzibura. Shabbos is the day off. You're going to make people spend their day saying all these brachas? Give people a break. So if we go so far as to basically cut down Shemona Esrei because of Tircha de Tzibura, now we're going to all sit there waiting for this Kohen to rattle off all of his refuah shalemas? No. Right? B'chein chashashu b'kama makaymes l'tircha de Tzibura. Now look at the words of the Rashba. The Rashba freely interchanges kavod tzibur and tircha de tzibur. Right? The Rashba says, you know why the Talmud Chacham, you know why we shouldn't wait for the Kohen? Because kavod tzibur. And then he immediately changes it to tircha de tzibura. So what do we see from this Rashba? So the Minchas Asher points out, Rav Asher Weiss, a prominent posek in Eretz Yisrael, points out that you see from the Rashba that the svara of Tircha de Tzibura is kavod tzibur. In other words, if let's say your father came in and asked you something, and you're on the phone, you say, just wait a minute, I'll let you know when I'm available. There would be a lack of kavod to your father. Or your Rebbe asks you, could you do, one second, I'm on the phone, I'll be off in a few minutes. It's a chutzpah to make somebody wait, someone who you have to honor. It's a chutzpah to make them wait. So if you have an obligation to honor the tzibur, being matriach the tzibur would be a violation of what? Kavod tzibur. So the Minchas Asher understands that the root of Tircha de Tzibura is kavod tzibur. Okay. Now, the first question we'd like to address is that the Mishnah says in Yuma that the second Sefer Torah we don't take out. Instead, what do? The Kohen Gadol reads it Baal Peh. Says the Gemara in Yuma, why? Tircha de Tzibura. Do we do that nowadays?
No.
Let's say on your Yom Tov you only have one Sefer Torah. Did you ever see anyone? The Bakara reads from the first one. What about the Maftir? He sits there, with his eyes closed and he says it Baal Peh? No, you roll. Most shuls have 2 Sefer Torah, but if you don't have 2 Sefer Torah, you roll it. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Ein goyel and Sefer Torah b'tzibur m'nei kavod tzibur. We don't roll because of kavod tzibur. V'mein lohem ela Sefer Torah echad. V'heim tzrichen likrois b'shnei inyanim, goylelim v'yidcha kavod hatzibur. You roll. So we don't do what the Gemara says they did in the Beis HaMikdash. In the Beis HaMikdash, they didn't roll, we roll. So how do we reconcile this? So the Magen Avram says that there is a distinction between the Klal Yisrael that gathered in the Beis HaMikdash and people in a shul. What's the distinction? Says the Magen Avram that in the Beis HaMikdash, he says, Hayu Kol Yisrael. It was the entirety of the Jewish people. You can't make the entirety of the Jewish people wait. You're going to make all of Klal Yisrael wait? You can't do that. But if you're in your local shul, the local shtibel, congregation, Avas Torah, whatever it's called, and it's only 50 people, 100 people, it's not Kol Yisrael, that type of tzibur, you're allowed to roll. You're allowed to make them wait. In other words, the Magen Avram is making a distinction between all of Klal Yisrael and a regular tzibur. What's the difference? Magen Avram says all of Klal Yisrael will not be meichel on their kavod, but a regular shul, they'll be meichel on their kavod. It's a little bit of a difficult distinction to make. Yeah, they'll be meichel on their kavod. You tell me what happens in a shul where they didn't roll beforehand, and all of a sudden, middle of the time, they're rolling. There's mumbling and grumbling and bumbling, right? Are they meichel on their kavod? I don't know how fast they're meichel on their kavod, but that's the distinction of the Magen Avram. The Avnei Nezer has a very, what?
If you only have one Sefer Torah in the show, what do you need to Chris? What do you do?
Maybe she'll learn about Peh, like they did in the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, what's the difference? Because in the Beis HaMikdash it's everyone, and when everyone's there, not everyone will be Meichel. Probably in a tzibur, not everyone is Meichel in there. People, the second you make anybody wait, right? The second the drasha goes beyond the 10-minute Chayk V'la Yavar line, people's watches are already, So the alarms already went off to wake them, right? They set the alarm 10 minutes. So, the Avnei Nezer has a beautiful chiluk over here. The difference between the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur and the regular Kriyas HaTorah in a shul. And the Avnei Nezer says like this. The Kriyas HaTorah in the Beis HaMikdash, whose obligation was it? It was the obligation of one person, the Kohen Gadol. The tzibur had to be there, but it's not their chiyuv of Kriyas HaTorah, it's the Kohen Gadol's chiyuv of Kriyas HaTorah. So now, the Kohen Gadol, for his personal obligation, he's going to make them wait. So they're going to say, you're going to make me wait, because you have a mitzvah to do? I'm not waiting for you. But Kriyas HaTorah in a shul, who has to lane? The Baal Koreh has to lane? I have to lane. We all have to lane. So now what? Now we're rolling and people are going to say, you're making me wait? So Baal Koreh says, I'm not making you do anything. You have to hear the Kriyas HaTorah the same as much as I have to hear the Kriyas HaTorah. I'm not making you wait, you're making me wait. We all have to wait. So since the obligation rests on everyone equally, it's not a lack of Tircha de Tzibura. Tircha de Tzibura applies more when it's one individual who has to do something and he's making the other people wait. But if everyone has to do the same thing, that's not a violation of Tircha de Tzibura. Okay, so what we like to do is explore the parameters of this concept of Tircha de Tzibura. One thing I'd like to point out is that think about what's happening over here. The Kohen Gadol is sitting in the Beis HaMikdash and he's laning the Torah Baal Peh. What is he violating? Dvarim shebechsav yata efshar lo imroi Baal Peh. That may be what? An Isser D'Oraisa. What's pushing off the Isser D'Oraisa? Tircha de Tzibura. Perhaps that shows Tircha de Tzibura has to be a D'Oraisa. If Tircha de Tzibura is only an Isser D'Rabbanan, why would an Isser D'Rabbanan of Tircha de Tzibura push off the Isser D'Oraisa of Dvarim shebechsav yata efshar lo imroi Baal Peh? Unless you say that Gadol Kavod Habriya Shadoicha Loisa Shevatayra, unless you say the concept of Kavod HaTzibur, despite the fact that it's only Midrabanan, is so powerful that it could push off a real lot. Okay.
It's a lot of things in the Beit HaMikdash is Sudoret and the Kohen do. Wear shatnez.
Well, there the Torah says explicitly. There the Torah says, Shadoicha Loisa says clearly written in the Torah. It doesn't say anywhere what the Kohen Gadol whether Kohen Gadol should roll or should not roll. Right? It doesn't say in the Torah you're not allowed to roll the Sefer Torah. So fine, the Kohen Gadol has to read this, no problem. Let him be Gadol of the Sefer Torah. We're deciding that we don't want to make the Tzibur wait. Based on what? Based on an Isser D'Rabbanan of Tircha de Tzibura. Well, how does that Isser D'Rabbanan push away the Isser D'Oraisa of Dvarim Shebechsav Yata Efshar Lo Imroi Baal Peh? Okay, let's see some of the specifics of this halacha. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Kedushin that a Talmid Chacham walks into a room or passes by, you're mechuyev to stand up. So what if, Talmid Chacham says, you know what? I really want to be mezakeh the rabbim. So I'm going to spend half of my day walking by people who are sitting to give them the great mitzvah of standing up for me. So the Gemara says they shouldn't do that. How do I know a zaken here refers to a Talmid Chacham? How do we know he shouldn't be matriach other people to stand up for him? Talmid loymar, zaken, right? Mibnei seva takam, v'hadat b'nei zaken, v'yaresa. In other words, they should stand up. Be afraid of Hashem. And from there the Gemara says, Amar Abayi nekatinan di'imakif chayi. That if a Talmid Chacham makes a circuitous route so that people don't have to stand up for him, that will be a zechus for the Talmid Chacham to live long. Gemara says, Abaye makif, Rav Zera makif. Okay. And that's halacha paskin in Shulchan Aruch, that a Talmid Chacham should not be matriach the tzibor to stand up for them. Look at number 11. Ein roi l'chacham sheyatriach ala tzibor l'chavein laver l'fneim sheyamnu mipanav ela yelch lo b'derech tzara. If they need to get in, let them take a shortcut, let them run in, kedei shelo yarbu lamos, so people shouldn't have to stand up. V'em yuchal lahakif haderech, if they could, slip in through the, special secret entranceway, the underground tunnel, this way, everyone's waiting for the Talmid Chacham, and then the next thing they know, he slipped in through the underground cave. That's the best thing. Why? If he does that, zechus hulai. Shulchan Aruch says it's a zechus for the Talmid Chacham not to make people stand up for him. As far as I know, I don't think anywhere else it says in Shulchan Aruch that if you keep this halacha, it's a zechus for you. Verstetzach, you do the right thing, it's a good thing. If you don't do it, it's a wrong thing.
What's the definition of lo yavo l'fnei? How far back do you have to be not to be considered yavo l'fnei? Like in a chuppah situation.
Well, it depends on the level of Talmid Chacham. If he's the Rebbe Muvak, so then Milay Einav. If you see him, even from a mile down, you have to, right? If he's just a regular Talmid Chacham within Dalet Amos. Okay.
Who makes the...
How do you determine what a Talmid Chacham is?
Or the level of a Talmid Chacham?
You have the card.
So,
Everyone knew his right shoe.
Depends on the frock that he's wearing.
Depends on how black the hat is.
You'll know it when you see it.
How much? What is in time Torah tzibur in timing it?
Oh, good. How much time is Tircha Tzura? Maybe we'll see that also. We're going to get to that. That's a Hashem.
I've seen where a mashgiach in a high school, when he comes in frequently. So what he did tell the boys is, you don't have just pick this. And he let them know that they don't have to.
They don't have to rise to full height. Okay. Chazon Ish says, the Talmid Chacham should not be moichel all the time. Otherwise, nobody will ever show the kavod. But it is important for the Talmid Chacham not to be matriach on the two. Okay. Now the Gemara says in Masechta Brachos, in terms of we'll see from here how far-reaching this concept is, how powerful the concept is. Hamispalel tzarich shechavein es libay l'shamayim. Someone who davens, he needs to have kavanah. Abba Sholoimer, Siman Ladavar, Tachen Libam, Takshiv Aznecha. Prepare your hearts, so your ears, so your tefillah should be heard. Tanya, we learned in a brisa that despite the fact that kavanah is so important, Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, Kach haya minhaga shel Rabbi Akiva. This was the custom of Rabbi Akiva. Kishahaya mispalel matzibor. When he used to daven with the tzibor, haya mekatzer v'oila mibnei tareach tzibor. Rabbi Akiva would daven a short Shemana Esrei. Right? You can imagine, probably if Rabbi Akiva was the rabbi in the shul, they probably waited for him. Right? They probably didn't say, yeah, we know just as much as he does. They probably waited for Rabbi Akiva. And nevertheless, Rabbi Akiva davened a short Shemana Esrei. So you'll say, well, maybe Rabbi Akiva was such a smart guy, he always davened the short Shemana Esrei. Says the Gemara, no. Whenever Rabbi Akiva would daven to himself, without being in the spotlight of the tzibor, right? Somebody could have placed him in one corner of the shul, and you come back an hour later, they found him in the other corner. But you have to, how? His bowings, his prostration, his intensity was so deep that he completely lost himself. He would start in one corner and end up in the other corner. So you can imagine how long Rabbi Akiva Shemona Esrei was, how much kavanah he had. And nevertheless, Rabbi Akiva, when it came time, when he's davening with the tzibur, he would not make them wait. He would not make them wait. Tircha the tzibur. So what do you mean? That means Rabbi Akiva gave up some of his kavanah. However long it took Rabbi Akiva, that means he needed that time. I'm sure Rabbi Akiva had a lot of important things to do. He wasn't, just in the mood of, shaking and bowing. Rabbi Akiva was a busy man, right? He had 24,000 students. He was the Amud HaTorah in his generation. If it took him a long time to daven Shemona Esrei, that means he needed the time. And yet, he cut down on his tefillah, not because he wanted to go learn. He didn't want to make the people wait. So, the question is, halacha l'maisa, you have a rabbi in a shul, and let's say the people finish Shemona Esrei after 41.3 seconds, and the rabbi is taking 3 minutes. Do you wait for the rabbi or do you not wait for the rabbi? So many shuls, they do wait for the rabbi. Is that a good custom or is that a bad custom? Writes the Shas Teshuvos Binyamin Ze'ev.
Who's Binyamin Ze'ev?
Who is the Shas Teshuvos Binyamin Ze'ev? He was a Rav in Greece. I believe before the 15th century. Maybe in the 15th century. And he writes, or what about the following question? Davening is called for 9 o'clock. Where's the rabbi? He's not here yet. Where is he? He's on the way. He'll be here 9:15. You wait for him? No. You don't wait for him. Says the Shas Teshuvos Binyamin. You have to wait for him. Says the Shas Teshuvos Binyamin Ze'ev. V'al asher kasavta denoig shliach tzibor kishamashlam tfilas lachash. That which he wrote, that the minhag of the shliach tzibor is when he finishes the silent Shemona Esrei. V'roitze lehispalel b'kol ram, and he wants to daven out loud. V'yesh sham chacham, and you have a rabbi there. Oyechad me'achashuvim, or an important person shalei hishlam tfilasai. V'yoisai shliach tzibor mamtin oisai ad sheyashlam tfilasai, and the shliach tzibor is waiting for him. Afilu shekvar shlimu kol hakol, and everyone else is sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Nira la'aniyas daiti, says Rabbi Binyamin Ze'ev. De'ein linag minag zeh. This is a bad custom. In many places, Chazal are worried about Tircha de Tzibura. The Sefer Torah is not rolled in the Tzibur because we don't want to bother the people. Again, Rabbi, so you see over here, Kavod and Tircha. It's interchangeable. Kedisa b'yuma. So says Binyamin Ze'ev, the Shas Teshuvos Binyamin Ze'ev, don't do this. Do not wait for the rabbi to finish Shemona Esrei. It's Tircha de Tzibura. He continues on. Uv'chahai gavna matzasi mishem Rabbeinu Shimshon ben Arav Rabbeinu Yosef. We find likewise from Rabbeinu Shimshon ben Arav Rabbeinu Yosef. T'chsev kishasimoy tzibur lesvala tfilas yudches brachos. When the tzibur finishes, v'achazan hayamamtin malahaschal tefila b'kol ram b'shvil echad yachid shabatzibur ayshnayim u'shloisha hayagoyer bay. Harav Rabbeinu Shimshon ben Rabbeinu Yosef, if he would see the Sheikh Tzibur waiting, for the rabbi to take the 3 steps back, he would scream at them. You can't wait for one person. You can have 3 rabbis in the shul. And they could be the big Gedolei Hadar. You can't wait for them. You're not allowed to. What?
That's not practice.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Okay? Kivan shesima at tzibur tfilas and balachash. Once the tzibur has completed their tefillah, ein roi la'atriach aleim. Rabbeinu Shimshon hayasham yoshev v'yeshiva. Rabbeinu Shimshon was sitting there. V'harav Rabbeinu Sam Rabbeinu Kshay Chazan noig lahamten afilu shosh mituvei akol hayagoyrim bay. When Rabbeinu Nesanel was the Chazan, and he waited for the 3 rabbanim to finish, Rabbeinu Shimshon would yell at him. And for the same reason, it would seem to me, the simple one, Binyamin, that's what the author is writing about himself. if the rabbi didn't get to shul yet, and they're waiting for him to come, don't wait for him. He has a reason, he's not there, he's a busy guy. He has responsibilities. He was up late the night before, he has a big family, beautiful. We're not holding him guilty, we just not waiting for him. You can't keep the people waiting. Whatever the reason is, and not only that, we're going to punish him for making the people wait. And besides that, there's a concept of emas tzibur. You have to be afraid of the tzibur. They're a force to be reckoned with. In this week's Parsha, the Chuvas Haran, the Drashas Haran writes, what was the Avera of Moshe Rabbeinu? That he hit the rock? No, he didn't do anything wrong by hitting the rock. God told him, take the stick. What's he doing with the stick? A magic trick. Right? What was the Avera? No Avera in hitting the rock. The Avera was, he said, Shimu na hamoirim. Asked Haran, what did he do wrong? They were all rebels. Yankel was a rebel, Beryl was a rebel, Fiva was a rebel. Every last Jew was a rebel. You're right, says Haran. Every last Jew was a rebel. But as a collective tzibur, they become an entity that transcends their individual limitations. That's the concept of Klal Yisrael. That an individual Jew may be lacking, but the tzibur of Yisrael, you cannot make any pagumim. You cannot criticize the collective tzibur of Klal Yisrael. That was the Avera of Moshe Rabbeinu. So you ask, do we paskin this way? You ever go to a shul that they don't wait for the rabbi? The Ramah in Shulchan Aruch paskins halacha l'maisa. You're not allowed to wait for the rabbi. Halacha l'maisa. Look at number 14. Says the Ramah, kahal she'espalalu. A call that daven v'kulam b'kim tefillah. Even though everyone knows how to daven, still you do chazar sashatz. Says the Ramah, v'im yesh yichidim b'kal. If you have some individuals among the call, shema'arichin b'tfilasan, ein l'shliach tzibur la'amtin alayim.
That's Yechidim, not the Rav.
Even Yechidim, yeah?
No, I was saying.
Oh, you're saying only Yechidim? He's quote. Look, and who does he quote? Afilu hayu chashuvei ayir. Even if these Yechidim are the most important people in the city.
No, Rabbi.
Not the Rav.
Where's the Rav? The Rav's davening in his living room?
I don't know. He doesn't say Rav.
He's not there.
Why didn't he say Rav?
Still, look what he writes. V'chein im haya minyan b'beis hakneses ein lahamtin al adam chashuv oy gadol shadayin lo ba. Who does he quote? Binyamin Zev. He's quoting the tshuva we just wrote. The simple meaning of the Ramah is the Shliach Tzibor waits for no one. The Tzibor is ready to go, you go. There is no one great enough to keep the Tzibor waiting.
How many people have to finish Marissa before?
So that's a different shaila. 6, 10.
So
but once you got the tzibur, so then you have the tzibur, you don't wait for anyone. So the question is, but we don't do this. Everybody knows, B'chol, Tfutzos Yisrael, Ashkenazim, Sfardim, Morakim, Italianim, right? Every Kol, Minei Yisrael.
So why
they wait for the rabbi.
Waiting for Miriam?
Why?
When she had Tzaraat.
Because there they waited for Anani HaKavod. Anani HaKavod didn't travel. Right?
I saw the following incident recently at my work. The Shliach Tzibur was finished. He got the go-ahead to say Kaddish.
Yeah.
In Aleinu. And then, he was an oval, so he
okay.
was Kaddish. But there was another oval in Shul. He wasn't finished with his Shmona Esrei.
He was the Rav of the Shul or a different Rav?
I beg pardon?
Is he the Rav Rabbi of the Shul?
Another oval. I didn't say Rav.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, it's a misconception that every Ovel says Kaddish.
The second Ovel had approached, had spoken to the Shliach Tzibur on numerous occasions privately.
Yeah.
To slow down, to let him finish.
No, you don't wait for an Ovel. But you don't wait for an Ovel.
You don't wait for him, and that's exactly what happened, and it blew up. And there was a big
All right, so when we talk about kas, we'll discuss anger management. But right, so this when it comes to Tircha de Tzibura, what the Ramah is saying is you don't even wait for the rabbi. Now the question is, but nowadays we all wait for the rabbi. Look at the Mishnah Berurah. Why don't we wait? Why don't we wait for the chashuvim? Because of Tircha Tzibura. V'yachshav noagu shashat mamtin. Nowadays the minhag is that the Shiach Tzibur waits ad she yisayim ha'avezin as tfilasai till the avezin's finished. Why? Says the Mishnah, I'll tell you why. Because in the olden days, when people said the words clearly, so whenever they're finished, that was considered a reasonable amount of time to wait. But nowadays, people no longer daven mila b'mila. Mila b'mila means where you're not putting the words together. Mila b'mila means not the way people are saying Chazar Sashatz, where each word is said individually. So since people are not really davening Shemona Esrei properly, we are not goyres those people. We're not goyres them. But everybody's doing it. That's unfortunate. But nowadays, Tircha de Tzibura is only when the Tzibur is doing something halachically reasonable. But nowadays, we don't deem the amount of time it takes people to daven a reasonable amount of time. It's not considered mila b'mila. So says the Mishnah Berurah, Lefi sharoiv ha'anoshim mispalalin b'merutza. Most people daven quickly. V'hamispalo mila b'mila. And a guy who wants to daven like a mensch, lo yuchal lemer kedusha matzibur. He won't be able to say kedusha. A guy who wants to say each word, not slowly, just to say each word, by the time he's finished Shemona Esrei, the Shiur Tzibur is already up to Sim Shalom. Right? L'chein mamtinim. Therefore, we wait for the Avezdin, because who are we going to wait for? Stam a guy who's davening nicely? That's not going to go over. Kihem oisim shaloi kedin. Since nowadays the tzibur is acting improperly, lafikach em ein Avezdin ba'ir. Okay, right? If there is no Aved, what if the rabbi's not in the shul? So what do you do then? Do you just say, oh, we have 10, let's go? No. The barometer is you wait the amount of time it takes to daven mila b'mila.
Well, how would you, if the rabbi's not in the shul?
So you know what? Time the rabbi, see how long it takes, and then post on on the board with the other 500 things they put on the front of the shul. 3 minutes and 3 seconds.
8 minutes by us.
8 minutes?
8 minutes.
All right, I'm coming. So lefikach emeina bezim beir hu hadin diyamtino al masfal mila b'mila. If you want to know if there's no rabbi, who should you wait for? A guy who davens normally. But if, you see the guy already took out this piece of paper with different names on it, and he's going through his refuah shalemas and all his bakashas, so then, we don't wait for that, right? Ein lahamtin la kamash kasav Rabbi Akiva. Like we find Rabbi Akiva, he davened longer than anybody, but when he davened with the tzibur, he was mekatzer. Now it's very interesting. The Mishnah Berurah later on offers a completely different reason why to wait for the rabbi. Very interesting reason. Look, 3 lines from the end. Ukahayim, and nowadays, nispashet aminag lahamtin ala besin. The minhag is we wait. Says the Mishnah Berurah, let me tell you another reason. V'nira hatam misham dehaminag kahayim ba'arei Yisrael. The custom in many Jewish cities is likbaya im ha'abezdin b'yachad eis lilmoid achar tefillah. To learn with the rabbi 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes after davening. V'im kishe yiskabitz minyan, take of yispalalu, yelech achar kalech aladarka. If you're just going to wait for 10 people, and you're going to let the rabbi continue davening Shemona Esrei, then when davening is over, what's going to happen? The rabbi is saying Tachman, Ashrei, Votzian. Everyone else is wrapping up the tefillin. No one's waiting even 10 seconds till the rabbi gets his act together to sit down to learn. And everyone's out the door. But the halacha is before you leave shul in the morning, you have to learn something. Did you know that it's a siman in Shulchan Aruch? Yelech mi beis hakneses lebeis hamedrash. That kol ha'hoylech, right? I believe it's the last Gemara Masechta Brachos. Kol ha'hoylech mi beis hakneses v'yelech lebeis hamedrash alav nemar yelchu mechayil achoy yirah l'Hashem b'tzion. Right? He will behold the pnei Hashchina. That the Magen Avraham says if you can't learn for 10 minutes, at least learn one pasuk or one halacha or something. So if you're not going to wait for the rabbi, then by the time you're finished, you're out the door, you're going to lose out this important inyan of learning before you leave the shul. That's another reason why we wait for the Rav. Okay.
Delay the announcement and do the learning first?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because if you make the announcement first, there was a point in my life I had giving a short shiur after davening, and then sometimes they want to say Tehillim right after davening. Fine, you want to say Tehillim, but no one's waiting around for Tehillim and the limud. So you're going to say the Tehillim, people are wrapping up during the Tehillim, and then they're out the door for the limud. So sometimes we used to do the Tehillim afterwards. We're going to see that in some shuls they wanted to institute Tehillim after davening. You may not be allowed to. It's Tircha d'Tzibura.
How come today, since the problem
if the Gedolei Yisrael deem it appropriate because of a certain situation, then they're authorized to do so. But conceptually, just to say, everyone has to say Tehillim, 3 chapters of Tehillim every day. Why not? Let's get a Kaddish in, a Kaddish before, a Kaddish after. It's a wonderful thing. It's not a wonderful thing. My time. It's your time. You can't make us wait. Why? Because you like Tehillim? You don't just institute things. Okay?
Well, where it applied, Koach Tzibur? Where? Only in Shul or everywhere?
Well, you need a tzibur. You need 10 people. So if
What about if you go to a place and you pay your own money and you go into a place, let's say, to a supermarket, it's also called Koach Tzibur?
Let's say Tircha d'Tzibur. You want to double park and you're holding back, 10 cars behind you. It's also Tircha d'Tzibur.
Yeah.
Stam, it's indecent. Tircha d'Tzibur.
Hard for him to park. What is he going to do?
Tircha d'Tzibur, it's not a chayk. It's not a paraduma. It's a logic. The logic is be courteous. Be considerate to other people's time. So even if it's one person, don't waste somebody's time. Right? You're a doctor. You say, come to my office at 3 o'clock. Don't make a guy sit in the office till 4 o'clock. It's indecent. It's not courteous. Right? Why is your time more important than someone else's time? You tell somebody to meet you at a certain time, don't waste their time. Right? Somebody once, they went to a doctor. So the doctor let them in an hour late. So the doctor says, here's the bill for $100. So the guy said, here's your bill. My time, I'm billing you $150 for my time. Right? It's also Tircha d'Tzibur. Okay. Yeah, right, exactly. Lots of luck. Thank you. So, Rabbi said, I want to add one very interesting reason given. I saw this in a number of Sfarim. Why do they wait for the Av Bezdin? Why do they wait for Shemona Esrei for the Rav? Now there are 2 main points in davening where you wait for the rabbi. What are they? Shema, Shemona Esrei. Chazal say in Psachim and in Yuma that person should be Snas HaRabbanos. You should hate authority because Rabbanos is Mekaberes es Ba'aleho. Yeah, it causes you to go early. Chas v'shalom. Yosef HaTzadik, right? Yosef HaTzadik. He was the first to go of all the brothers because he was the leader. Also, Chazal say that when a Dayan judges, he should view it as if Gehenim is open before him. Because if you make a mistake, that's where you're going to end up. So the rabbi has a very difficult job, right? He has all these Chazal staring him in the face. Rabbanos is Mekaberes es Ba'aleha, Chas v'shalom. And he should be Gehenim psucha tachtav. There are only 2 things. There are 2 things that are marich yamav and are mitzanin in loy Gehenim. The Gemara says, "Kol hamarich b'tfilasai." Anyone who davens a long Shemona Esrei, marichin lo yamav, gives you arichas yamim. Someone who is careful to say the words of Kriya Shema exactly, mitzanin in loy Gehenim. They cool off Gehenim, right? They once asked the Satmar Rebbe. They said, Satmar Rebbe, the way the Hasidim are pronouncing the words, it's not really. They're not being medaktik, melel, melrad, the nekudais, right? It's not baruch ata, it's baruch ata, right? And don't you know the Gemara says that if you say Kriya Shema carefully, it cools off Gehenim? He said, I'm working on my Hasidim, they shouldn't go there in the first place. Okay, anyway. So therefore, there are 2 segulos in Chazal that lengthen one's life. If you daven along Shemona Esrei, and if you daven along Kriya Shema. So at least we give the rabbi a break in order to protect him. We give him the courtesy of being able to daven along Shemona Esrei and along Kriya Shema, to offset, the difficulties of the job. That's brought down, by the way, in the Sefer Shoshane Leket. It's also, I saw in a footnote of the Minchas Asher. Okay. You know what? Let's conclude with the following. In the Shas Tshuvas Lahanhagos. This is from Rav Moshe Sternbach in the Tshuvas Lahanhagos number 17. He brings down over here, he quotes the Ramah. Ramah says, you don't wait for the rabbi. But then Rav Sternbach quotes a recently published tshuva of Rabbi Akiva Eger, that nowadays the custom is, in all shuls, You wait for the Rav. Says Rabbi Kiva on the fourth line, I efshar l'shanois be'inyan hahamtana ala Rav avbezin b'shas tefillah. Nowadays, you can't change this custom. Nowadays, Rabbi Kiva writes, it's one of the yesoidos of the Torah. Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, if you're going to veer off from this halacha, then eventually you're going to distort the entire body of halacha. So Rav Sternbach writes that if a tzibur today would like to revert back to the times of the Ramah and say, look, we're giving 3 minutes, we ain't waiting for anybody. He says, Heim poigim b'yasoidei ha'Torah. They're mezalzel in the words of Rabbi Kiva Eger. And he says their tefillos will not be answered in Shemayim. The tefillos will not be answered in Shemayim. That nowadays a tzibur that does not want to wait and show the kavod to this tshuva Rabbi Kiva Eger, he says Heim poigim b'yasoidei ha'Torah, and the mezalzel in the Rav. Now, very interesting. What if, and we'll conclude with this, what if the rabbi, he feels he has to daven a long Shemana Esrei, but he doesn't want the tzibur to wait for him? So he could tell them before, don't wait for me. Fine. What if he didn't do that? Is he allowed to be mafsik in the middle of Shemana Esrei and say, okay, go ahead? So listen to this. There are two eitzas. One eitzah is, you could take 3 steps back in middle Shemana Esrei, even though you're up to Ato Gibar Lo'elam Hashem. You could make them think you finished, even though you're in middle Shemana Esrei. It's asur to be mafsik. It is asur. But Tircha de Tzibura is more important than being mafsik in Shemana Esrei. Or, you could motion, you could say, go ahead. The Steichemed writes, he prefers to take 3 steps back, even though that's a greater hefsek in Shemana Esrei, because motioning is a little bit arrogant, as if you're acknowledging everyone's waiting for you, and you're giving them the go-ahead. So the Michtav L'Chizkiel writes, look at number 18. What? They give a look. So even that, you're not at a motion with your eyes in Moshe Esrei. It's asur. But for Tircha de Tzibura, it's permitted. By the way, in the middle of benching also. Benching has a status of Shemona Esrei. You can't even motion with your eyes in the middle. You can't go, nu. Your wife brings you the phone. You have a phone call. Don't be benching to other people on the phone, motioning, texting. You're not doing that. Benching has a status of Shemona Esrei. So look at number 18. Ha'olam mikol harashim. What emerges from everything we've wrote until now? The shnei hadrachim hanizkar b'sheila hinam nechaychem. There are 2 possible ways to avoid the Tircha de Tzibura are correct. Vein b'hem pikvuk medina. There's no problem with either one. Mishum chashash hefsek. Ulechadchila tzorich lahafsik b'ramiza. The best thing to do is to motion. The kill mehilach. That is more lenient than taking 3 steps back. V'yi'ikol amechash. If you're worried it's going to look arrogant, karamas rucha, aduf tfei lahafsik bipsios. It's better to take 3 steps back. V'chein hu min hagi. Says the Steichem, that's what I personally did. Lahafsik bipsios mi lahafsik b'ramiza. It's better to stop, to cut off your steps, than, in other words, it's better to take the 3 steps back than to be mafsik with emotion, with your eyes, with your hands. Now he says, don't just take 3 steps back in the middle of the bracha, you should at least complete the bracha you're middle of, and then take the 3 steps back. Okay. So now Rabbi Sai, this is what the Steichemed writes. What does the Mishnah Berurah say? Mishnah Berurah writes, halacha lamaisa, that if somebody, they feel you're waiting for them, then you're allowed to motion, go ahead. Mishnah Berurah writes that, you're allowed to motion, go ahead. Says Mishnah Berurah, ba'afilu, he says in general, Ramiza ba'alma is asur, unless there's a child who's crying. You're allowed to be meramis him that he should be quiet, so he shouldn't disturb you. Look at number 19. V'chein adam nichbar sha'omer b'tfila v'hashatz mamtin olav v'amiras kadosh ha'kedushav v'eina merutzu b'kach, and it's disturbing you mutter le'larames l'shatz. Rabbi Sai, there are many, many, many examples of this halacha, but we don't want to violate the concept of Tircha de Tzibura, so we will hold it over here, Mr. Shem. Next week we could continue some other.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.